So, good morning, everyone. Today, the best seats are in the front, so I encourage everyone to take a seat here in the front. It will be a free view to the audience, to the panel. Come up here to the front to see what's happening and interact with us. Yeah, it takes time. So, today, no hiding in the back seats. Please come to the front, see what's happening here on stage and interact with us. So come in, take your seats. The best seats are in the front. Free view to the stage here. Close interaction with the panelists. Interaction. Okay, so I do the introduction, Immaculadas. Okay, everyone, please come in, take a seat, and let us start. So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this closing session of the EOSC Symposium. It has been very intensive 3 days, which you have made so interactive and hopefully very beneficial for yourselves. At least it has been very, let's say, fruitful and beneficial for us because it was so good to see you all here and being so engaged. What are we going to do in this final session? We are doing nothing more important than taking EOSC to the future. And we will discuss about how we build the EOSC Federation. And for that, we have invited 5 distinguished guests and speakers who you have met in the last 3 days here already. And yeah, I hope you will challenge them with some of the questions. So I would like to, and this is how we are going to do it now, and I think I have to make some official announcement about Slido. So as in all the other sessions, you can ask your questions through Slido, and they will bring up, I think now, the QR code, and you have to type in EOSC Symposium 2023, choose the right room, and ask your questions, please. So this is the formal introduction, and with that, I would like to ask our speakers on the podium, and I would like to start with Immaculada Figueroa, and we are very happy to have you back and representing the host country, Spain, and she will give the view of the steering board. Take a seat here, please. I think this one is. This one. Thank you very much, Immaculada, and you can give a hand of applause, please. Then our second participant is Dejan Dvořák from the DG RTD, Deputy Head of the Open Science and Research and Infrastructure Units. Dejan, please. So the next one in the lineup, Bob Jones, Deputy Head of the IT Department at CERN and Director of the EOSC Association. Bob, come on stage, please. Representing the Instruct Eric and being the head of the biocomputing unit at the National Center for Biotechnology here in Spain, José María Carazo. Please join us. And last but not least, Eric Heuser, CEO for Sherent. Eric. So, these are our guests. You are the audience, and we want to make this a very interactive session. But before we do that, I invite the speakers in the order I have presented you now to give 3 slides of a lightning talk, which is not longer than 5 minutes each, and then we go into a discussion. Immaculada, please. We have a clicker, and someone will bring up the slides.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me being here in this closure session. I'm waiting for my slides. Okay. So we don't. Okay. So I have tried to be tied to the question that was planned. So the first one is what do we mean by EOSC Federation? And I have difficulties to read my slides.
Take a microphone. Yeah, they asked me to do this here. Hello.
Or maybe here, looking at the, sorry for that. No? I'm sorry. This one? Yes. Okay. Sorry, because I don't read my slides. So, in relation with this question, we are convinced that the European Federation, the models for the European Federation are important because it's the way to make available the resources at national level and put these resources or include these resources in national collaboration. In our case, the Federation is based in the institutions that in which the resources are placed in our country, and these resources is the one that we are going to put make available to the collaboration, to the international collaboration. And we consider that we have to establish a base, a federation at national level, and then we have to establish this international dimension, and probably we have to establish an umbrella above this national federation in order to go for this international federation with the European node. The degree of coordination is going to depend on the nature of the resources. It's not the same if we are talking about infrastructure or we are talking about researchers and developments at the level of research performance organization, and it's something that we have to take into consideration, and we cannot be attached to a very hard model. We need to have a light coordination in order to give possibilities for a better coordination of all our resources in the best way for the specific node. Oh, sorry. Here, no? In our case, I had the opportunity yesterday to show how is our system, the Spanish system of research and innovation in Spain, and it's very complex. I assume that in other countries it's similar. So I am convinced that we are not an exceptionality, but it's not easy. What I want to say is that it's not easy. We have the large research performance organizations. We have the e-infrastructures. We have the Spanish network of e-science, that it is a governing body that we have created in order to advise us and serve like a interface between the ministry and the actors in the e-science in Spain. We have, of course, and it's very important in our case in Spain, the research infrastructures, and all the research infrastructures can be nodes of this federation. And we have, in this sense, the national research infrastructure, and also all the nodes that are established in Spain that are part of our ERICS, research infrastructure. We have also to take into consideration that there are networks already established around the different thematic nodes, and we have to count on that also for the federations. We have the network of research centers that are joined together in a specific body that is created here in Spain, SOMA. Well, in general, what I want, of course, as universities, because yesterday I forget to include in my slide the universities, and the universities is a main pillar for the participation and a main element in the establishment of this federation. So it is complex. So we are going to make possible this distributed federation along the territory and among all of these different institutions. We are convinced that talking about the mechanism to enable this federation, we are convinced that the same model may not fit to all the countries. So we are convinced, and I had opportunity yesterday already to mention that we require flexibility. Yeah, and also we have to take into consideration things that all of us know as funding agencies. It's not easy, the transfer of money beyond our borders. So in general, it's easier I'm late? Yes. It's easy to be supported in models in which the Spanish funds are used for the funding of the national institutions, and then to establish the way to join through this fund with the international node. And I think that's more or less what I wanted to say. So I have just to conclude in this that we are very happy with the conclusion of the meeting. I think that we have had opportunity to discuss about many different topics. I am convinced that we have clear ideas about how to do it, but we need a bit of time in order to go ahead with all the things that we need. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Immaculada. Take a seat, please. So that was a perspective of one of the member states. Now we're curious to hear what's the position of the European Commission. Dejan.
Good morning, and thanks, Ute. I'll start by maybe congratulating and thanking for the organizers for this really lovely event and everybody for amazing participation. I've been in many sessions, and that was very inspiring. The title of the session was Taking EOSC into the Future, and maybe if we go to the next slide, I was reflecting a little bit, what are some trends or what are some factors or things that might influence the evolution of EOSC beyond what also, obviously, we have been discussing a lot in the past few days. And we all can recognize that the growth and in quantity of data and how much of that is available to researchers is definitely an important factor. Looking into the research infrastructures as a major producers of FAIR, but probably also as the users, right? It's another element to keep in mind. Data-intensive science and innovation, everything is revolving around data, of course, but also then why? I mean, the artificial intelligence is knocking on our doors. We have seen it in action more and more. It's not something new, but the capacities and capabilities of it are exponentially growing. And potentially also some external factors like policy drives and also materialization of the data spaces, where it will allow to start to interconnecting different sectorial domains, maybe some regulatory setups that come with that, or in the context of AI, like AI Act and so on. All these are things that will shape how and what we do in the future. In the next slide, or I have to click, yeah. So in any case, we all know that EOSC is a long-term ambition, and we've gone a long way, in my opinion, already. I mean, a lot has been done, a lot has been achieved, and we need to continue this process. We need to continue the process also on to find a way of how this setup will look in 5 or 10 years from now, how the financing around that will be, how to organize ourselves in order to support the operations and in order to support further evolution and in a way expansion of it. We need to hopefully strengthen the direct participation of the member state. This is essential, and and in what form or shape this will take, of course, this is still under the discussion. It is also important to keep developing and come to some sort of a blueprint model that will match these different EOSC specificities. We know that there is a lot of diversity, there are a lot of different communities with different needs, with different setups, with different level of maturity as well, and helping them catch up, some of them, but also catering for diversity is important. And finally, also keep converging on the questions of fair, keep converging on the questions of providing these data services, developing skills, increasing value. All these are things that are part of this long-term ambition and will drive that EOSC further and faster into the future. And in the last slide, I would just like to touch a little bit of some of the takeaways, at least from my personal view, what I've seen. Really, this ever-growing and very committed community, it's impressive. I mean, number of useful developments and the knowledge that is growing and shared and kind of a build upon, and understanding of the problems and challenges, which is deepening, including then and coming up with very concrete outcomes like virtual research environments. These are really, really things that makes one want more. Maturity of EOSC is also increasing, and with that will increase the value. That's clear. And how this you can also see is look back at few years ago. Look at the slides. Look at the presentations. The challenges that are discussed today are much deeper and more profound, and we understand them better. We may not have all the answers yet, but as long as we keep working on that, this will come and it will evolve. And also encouraging is that we start to go very much beyond the technical and data management questions, like operations and giving the high level of service to the researchers or other users, like how to organize things better, how to make it sustainable, how to provide some sort of a framework that would kind of allow for certain legal certainty or support the researchers in these questions. So all in all, for me, really great event, but of course it keeps me wanting more and hoping to see even higher value, bigger EOSC, more of it in any sense. Thanks.
So to conclude the tripartite view on how we get to the future, I would like to invite Bob Jones, representing the voice of the community, for the EOSC Association, please.
Thank you very much, Uta. So I'll give you the view from the association for how we see things moving in the future and what we think we've achieved so far. So first of all, as I say, this is the association speaking here. Carol can't be with us at the moment, so I'm standing in for him. And we are the voice of the community in the sense that there are more than 250 members and observers that have willingly joined the association, and many of them represented at this excellent symposium this week. It's very important for us that we take the bottom-up point of view, listening and consulting as much as possible with all our members. And we've tried to do that through many of the sessions here this week in terms of listening through the task forces, which have run a number of important sessions showing their advances that they're doing, and then also a number of the unconference structuring events as well. So with that, we try to build up a common position across the membership, which is then brought forward into the overall governance structures, working with the Commission and working with the member states. If I look at some of the key points that I think have advanced this week and which we have to concentrate on in the future. The first one, of course, is everybody tells us inside the membership that sustainability of EOSC is a very, very important factor. So understanding what will be the governance and funding models of EOSC beyond the current Horizon Europe programme must be an objective for the association, and we've taken that to hand and we're to drive as much as we can the thinking forward. Carol presented this slide to you this week, highlighting the steps with the timeline going on to try and come to a conclusion for how we will structure ourselves after 2027, and the 5 main tasks that are being looked at that oversee what the EOSC should be in the future, and the proposition from the association to group them into 2 groups. One to be formed by a trusted legal entity, could be the association, it could be an evolution of the association, and then also some of those tasks to be performed, we believe, by the European Commission, because we see them as a more broader and more open structure rather than being performed by the specific legal entity. So we've already we can see some advances here in terms of the number of options that were originally considered have been reduced, so there's progress there as well, and we will take in these ideas further forward in the hope that by the end of this year we have a clearer point of view across the tripartite about how EOSC should look in the future. And then on the other side as well, there's been a lot of discussion about Node. It's sort of permeated across many of the sessions and conversations here this week. It's an important concept because it brings together the areas of governance, policy and architecture. And with all the input that we received, again, we've been trying to work bottom up to get the inputs from our membership and the broader community. So we've organised 3 events, and we've consulted perhaps more than 150 people involved by those events to come with a position statement of what the Federation should look like and how it should be governed in the future. This is important. If one of the important steps that we have to do now is go from the theory to the practical. This is what the end users want. They want to see something on their laptops that they can actually use coming from EOSC. And getting the Federation deployed and using the opportunity of the upcoming procurement of the EC node as a way of initiating this practical deployment of the Federation, it will bring us added value for the end users, and they will start to be able to materialize all the thinking that's gone into the association and to EOSC up until now. And with that, I'll stop. Thank you.
So we move on to have now 2 presentations from 2 of our members. And we start with the research infrastructure view, and Jose Maria Carrazzo will represent and present the Instruct ERIC, also as an example for how to build a federation. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Ute. And thank you, everybody, for being here on the last Friday morning. I'm going to be very practical and very simple in a way. I'm going to take the position, I work in Instruct, research infrastructure, but I think perhaps what I'm going to say is general to many research infrastructures. Just the next slide, when you think in Instruct, is about structural biology, and if you think in the recent pandemic, well, and you think in how the molecules that really were not helping us during these years, really they look like, and how we could fight against them, this is the work of Instruct. So in the next slide, just going into the matter. I mean, I should say that not being in the EOSC community, but being in the community that generate data, EOSC has always been a difficult and vague project for us to understand. I'm very happy this meeting to see that I see how things advance and how they advance in a way that we see how we can contribute in more concrete manners. I also want to make a point that I have made through some questions during the meeting, that the influence or the impact of EOS is huge. I mean, really, the system of systems is impacting every system, and is impacting in ways that align them. If we think in EOS of this web of fair data, research data, the first thing is to have the data, and to have the data fair. And although this is something perhaps obvious or perhaps taken for granted, I wonder in how many financial models of the research infrastructure is that. And maybe not in all, or maybe not in many. And this is something that we have to consider. It's something internal to the research infrastructure, pushed by EOS. I feel it, pushed by EOS. And now that we do it, I mean, make all the sense of the word to do it in a way that can be reused in itself and can facilitate the connection with many other type of data. Although it is true that sometimes the use cases are not so easy to construct within the cluster. We make a map with use cases, cross clusters. I don't know if we really have use cases at this moment that really convince me. So this is essentially how I see. Let me. This screen are fantastic. You don't see them. So, let me make a very good point. And the next slide is that working with this concept of how it is difficult for us to go into the EOS world, something that is complex the first time and perhaps the second time that you see it is the governance of the steering board, the tripartite events, all that. However, thinking about that, they are extremely interesting and really perhaps the way to solve many of the issues I was talking about. The steering board that really we had a number of presentations about that is a very political body, and is the one that knows that if they are pushing in one direction EOS, they are pushing in any other direction a number of other things. So they are in the position to be coherent and to know that funding means really to fund everything that moves when you are acting the level in that direction. And then for the member states to be convinced, there is these tripartite events. What better to convince my country or whatever country that to see the richness of its research community and to see it at the time that they are the representative of the country and the representative of the European Council and of the association. I think these instruments, at the end of the day, are really the ones that may really help us to go ahead in a concrete manner. So in the next slide, I have 3 points that I think reflect my optimism for the future, is that I see EOS evolving in a concrete manner. I mean, this may be obvious, but at least I am finishing this meeting with thinking that in a thematic way, we have a clear line in which there is the rule for participation, the definition of many things, but there is a direction in which we can really align our work. I also see that this system of systems is making us to change the way we do science in every little field and certainly in the large manner. And I also see how the governance of EOS, with its complexity and at the beginning difficulty to be understood, it has the instruments that really can help us to go ahead. So from the point of view of my research infrastructure and in general, I end this meeting with many questions, absolutely, but at least with the feeling that we have a concrete manner to go, and also with the feeling that we have instruments to do it. Thank you.
And then I would like to invite our last speaker, Eric Heuser, from GEANT, one of our founding members, to present his view.
I'll try and do it from here. Because there's so many models for EOSC, I decided to create another one. And this is from an operational perspective, and it allows me from quite a distance to look at how I see this evolving. And I disregarded the tools you need to deal with data, etc. It's just about how we federate the data. And if we go through the model from bottom to top, first of all, you need a network to make sure that the data can be transported from A to B. And then on top of that, you need an AAI infrastructure. And that's what we currently have is of course EduGain. On top of that, you need an AAI platform to make sure that you can link that infrastructure into the various storages where you need the access, whether they be nodes or whatever. On top of that, you have what currently is called the nodes. I won't go into how that works further. I think Bob clearly explained that we're working on that as a community to define what a node is. And I'd like to stress that that layer is very important to be federated. And then you have these federated nodes with all the data, but then you have to make sense of it. So you need a virtualization layer on top of that, which is, of course, the Fair Digital Object layer. And based on that, you can have further layers to build the whole data science environment in the form of categorizations, virtual collections, etc., etc. Now, going through those layers again, the bottom tree, we've got you covered. GEANT delivers a fiber-based network all through Europe, connecting all research sites that you can imagine in Europe, all universities. So that is there. EduGain, similarly. It's all over Europe. It's a federated AAI system that we have through Europe, and even beyond Europe, it extends into 105 countries. Core AAI platform, the e-infras are delivering core AAI platforms that have been proven, are operational with various research infrastructures and with EuroHPC, for example. So that leaves to work on the two green things, the federation layer, the nodes layer, and the fair digital objects. And then, of course, everything above that. And my advice for the future is, and that aligns, I think, with what Karel and Bob have shown, is to focus very much first on those two green blocks. Work from the simple part, and then once you have that, you can build the complexity on top of that. If you start to focus on the top blocks, you'll get lost in complexity. I speak from experience with the internet. If you look at the internet, we started with very, very simple IP layer and a smaller TCP layer on top of that, and built on that. Everybody in the world still uses that IP layer, but the complexity on top of that, from websites, email systems, video conference systems, is huge. If we had started from that point, the internet would never have become what it is currently. So I think that is where we need to concentrate our efforts. And please, and I gave this message before, don't procure or don't require in your projects anything about AAI or the network. Just assume that is a given. If we start procuring and asking for new things in that sense again, we're going to build, reinvent the wheel and build double infrastructures, which is a waste. About the federation, let's see, right, yeah. So about the federation needs to be truly federated. What I didn't like about Kolbe's slide yesterday was that it still showed a master node, which I really think is not scalable. We've seen that over and over again on the internet. That doesn't scale. If you take a hierarchical approach, something breaks, the whole hierarchy breaks. So I really pledge here, and I heard that yesterday in the unconference also, to go for a real, truly federated, without any masters. You might want an example node or a reference node to show how it can be done, but certainly not a master node. And last but not least, this is Géant, this is what we cover, and as you can see, we cover the whole of Europe, and like I said, the bottom layers in this model, we've got you covered. Thank you.
So, in order to start our discussion here, the first point is we distribute microphones so that we don't have to make them travel around. So I think we have 4, that's very good. So you share one, very good. And also here, the steering board with the commission. We have structured our discussion about 3 topics that we would like to discuss and touch on how to build the EOSC Federation. It's the policy, the governance, and the funding layer. And when it comes to the policy, we have heard a lot of, is EOSC too much built bottom up? Do we top down? Do we need more bottom up? So what's your view on that? Where do we stand and where do we go to? How much top down is needed and how much bottom up is required? Who wants to start? Bob.
Yeah, so I think from what we've learnt inside the association, as Immaculada said, the flexibility that you get with a bottom-up approach is very important. For us, we have to make sure that it's something that the broad community can live with in terms of policies. We also have to make sure that it fits in with many of the existing structures that are already there. We're not going to replace those things that are already there and already working. They have to continue and be able to contribute. Now, linked with that, there has to be an element of top-down as well, right? We cannot do it exclusively bottom-up. There's always, depending on how you woke up in the morning, you either think it's too bottom-up or too top-down. The reality is we do need a mixture of both.
So I guess the Commission is more for the top-down side, or am I wrong?
I wouldn't say so. I mean, looking at the reality is that EOSC is, I mean, looking even here in the room and looking at the discussions there are, this is, for me, completely bottom-up approach. I mean, maybe, I mean, otherwise we wouldn't have the diversity that we have now. If it had been top-down, then there would be one way of doing it. Everybody would have to align, and that's clearly not the situation now. I think that this has to continue in this direction. It is valuable. It is a process. It will evolve. There may be consensus among the community that they want some things to be sharedly agreed or, I don't know, brought higher up at the decision, and that's fine and it can be done. But so far the process I see was purely bottom up, and I think that this can continue.
Eric, would you agree to that after having, let's say, pointed out the discussion on whether there's a master node, a reference node, or a central node?
Yeah, it depends what discussion, right? I think certainly the design, the architecture, etc., should never be a top-down discussion. That should be a bottom-up discussion, in my view. The internet would never have been realized had that been a top-down discussion. However, I think what in this sense was required is a vision, and that was clearly top-down, and I think that's a good vision. and the Commission wants to support that and stimulate that and the various elements to make sure that that gets together. And there, in that sense, in the funding, in the policy, you need a bit of top-down, but not forever. At some point in time, I think, when things are operational, the further evolution needs to be fully bottom-up, in my view.
Immaculada, you were asking for flexibility.
Yes, I am asking for flexibility because my position is that the federation is rather bottom-up also. So I think that it should be bottom-up. Of course, we have to have an equilibrium also, especially, as said, in the construction, because we have to have this top-down component also being involved. But the flexibility that I claim is because it should be supported in the structures that we have at the level of the countries. We cannot invent the wheel. We have to build upon what we have already established. We have all of our countries such as systems well defined in which all the actors are established, and we have to work with them in order to see how we can do this federation. And of course, it is bottom-up, and it is a distributed model.
Thanks very much. Jose Maria, I mean, you have built already a federation with, I mean, leading him into an ERIC in the end. How did you approach it? What were the biggest challenges getting there?
Well,
because in the end, you did need then the top-down support also from the countries to buy into that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, I'm going, taking a little bit of the other previous question. I would say that EOSC has to be a place in which thematic approaches and already existing communities feel comfortable. And from that point of view, that voice has also have to be taken into account. And is being taken into account, especially now in the current design that is being prepared. And I should say that how we have evolved in Instruct has been very much influenced by EOSC, even if we are not doing yet EOSC, in the sense that the concept that open data, fairness of the data, has really impacted our infrastructure very much. And the ideas were there, but one of the big vectors have been EOSC, and really I acknowledge that very much.
And do you have the feeling that it's the same for all the research infrastructures, at least those that are already on the S3 roadmap, or is there still a work to be done?
Well, I think that they all feel the push. Another thing is that they all fear the cost, in the sense that to get into fairness and then to get into the federation demands changes in the financial model. And this is an element that I think we all are not very sure how to handle. I was trying to be very positive.
Since Immaculada is sitting on so many councils of international research infrastructure, you will have the answer to that, right?
No. But I can tell you that my view in relation with the research infrastructures is that the most of them are already fair by design. So the considerations of the needs of having this data fair is something that the research infrastructure are born with this need. And we have here a representative of our infrastructure, so I think that it's like that. Of course, whatever we need further to do, we need to fund it, and we have to find a way to support it. But I think that our wisdom is that this, like open science, is something that is embedded in the work programs of the infrastructure, and it's part of the normal part. We have to avoid to think that we have to ask for additional money for doing additional things. These additional things need to be part of the work program of the research infrastructure and need to be included in the budgets of these infrastructures in a regular way.
Bob, since you have been leading on the activities we are doing with the research infrastructures that are in our association, would you support the view here?
So I think many of the long-standing operational ones, they have already in place federated structures for sharing and distributing their scientific outputs, so the data, the results, and things like that. I think we've talked about the question of fair. Is something fair or not, or is it somehow fair is something? I think many of them will say there are some fair aspects that they have. I don't think in their own self-assessment they would say everything that they do is completely fair. And I know from the ones I've been speaking to, they are making plans for how they can improve on their current situation. The message I get from them is that they do require some form of support for adaptation, of moving towards and integrating with EOSC. And that we have to understand how that funding will happen. There has been structures for many of the research infrastructures in terms of their creation, their design, their creation. That's been supported by the European Commission. The operational aspects are normally covered by the countries, as outlined as well. Now, this potential adaptation is addressed by some of the ongoing projects. There's been the science clusters, which I think have produced excellent results in terms of use cases and examples of how related sciences can work together within those clusters. And now the next step is how can we go beyond those clusters and make interclusters work more effectively and integrate more easily into EOSC. And I think as we get to the idea of the deployment, and I insist on the word deployment, of the EOSC Federation, I think this is the opportunity where we'll see the benefits of that work's been performed up until now.
Eric, you're nodding.
Yeah, I very much believe in deployment. Again, going back to my experience in the internet, if you look at internet standardization, it works very simple. You get together, you build consensus, bottom up, you create what is called a proposed standard, and that standard will only go to the next phase if there's 2 independent deployments. And the experience of that deployment is fed back into the quality of the standard. So there's a new version, it's called a draft standard, and then you need 4 different deployments, independent deployments, for it to become a final standard. So I agree with Bob, that has driven the growth of the internet, the acceptance and the quality of the software and the standards. And so I very much agree we need that for EOSC as well.
Diane, you're getting ready to jump. You have a view. How do they come together, the national and the thematic federations?
I mean, there's no doubt this can all work together, and then the community has to find ways of interconnecting, and indeed there are examples of clusters that are already very well interconnected, and like Bob mentioned, there are now, steps further to take and are in the making in a way where cross-cluster connection is going to happen. And maybe when we discuss this bottom-up and top-down, I mean, I can kind of bring back to what Eric just said. Maybe the standardization element is something that not necessarily has to be top-down provided, but built by the community and then kind of overseen from the top. And there maybe the value can be.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. No, come on. You have, Marie, come on, Immaculada, what was your view? You were jumping to the microphone. Please comment.
I just want to support it.
Please. Now, in order to regulate the federation, what do we need in terms of rules of participation? Who is driving them and how do we agree on them? Who has a view on that? Bob starts.
Yeah, so it's we've been doing quite a bit of work inside the association to understand this aspect. And just for the audience, bear in mind, I realize it's probably the boring bit, right? And you'd much rather do the technical work and the deployment, things like that. But without these rules of participation and the policies, we can't agree how we're all going to work together, right? So it has to be done, yeah? Now, the point that comes across from the events that we've been working with, also the intermediate output of the rules of participation task force, indicate that there has to be some sort of very basic governance structure at the federation level, okay? And then there may be more detailed policies and governance for the individual nodes which make up the federation. But very much seeing it somehow that the federation itself is governed by its participants. So imagine if we have a federation of nodes, the body of nodes are the ones that collectively make the decisions about those things. And that has to take into account a number of steps. Eric highlighted the part of the technical development, and I think we have to take an iterative approach towards that. We start with the best we have, we deploy it. Yes, there's going to be some problems. Yes, there's going to be some issues. We make another iteration, we improve, and we keep going like that. And at each stage, making sure that each iteration is approved by the overall body of the federation which comes together. I don't believe that the federation should be governed by any single funding agency or organization, but it really has to be brought together from all the participants who are actively contributing towards that federation.
I think it would make a lot of sense that we, as part of the association, as research infrastructure, we feel that we are attracted by the whole concept, and really that there is not a barrier, but actually, I think something that we have to do to get a larger value at the end.
And talking about the member states, I think that I am thinking, for instance, in the model of the ERIC, that is, for me, it's very easy to understand. I think that, especially for the distributed infrastructures, I think that we have to establish this bottom-up layer, that is the federation at the level of the European Union node. And then we have the national nodes, that is the federation at the level of member state. And I think that we have to have clear these interfaces, all the requirements for the federation or the national node with the European node, but we have to leave to the country the decision on how they want to organize itself inside the country. So the national node is something that the organization and the governance is a responsibility of the country. And then it's necessary to establish this communication, this interface between this node with the node at the level of the European Union. I think it's the only way that I see that we can go ahead and progress in good speed, taking into consideration what we have at the member state level.
Do we only have one node per country? That brings us back to the nodes discussion, and maybe, I mean, we have, let's say, have had a lot of that, but I mean, do we have one node per country? Because, I mean, I guess in the German example, they would say all our nodes are by default thematic, and so how do we approach this?
No, it's not necessary to have a one node per country. It is up to the country to decide how they want to be involved in this federation. So it depends. In one country, they decide to go for a unique point of connection with the European node, and in other countries we can decide, well, for this purpose we are going to have this node, and for this other purpose, for services, we can be supported in this infrastructure that is well established, know how can work with these issues, and for instance, for other issues, we can be supported in a research performance organization, even in our mandated organizations.
So it's again the flexibility, but how does flexibility translate into governance? Who has an idea? How do we address that? Governance, how do we, because, how the question is, yes, we understand flexibility is needed, but how do we translate it into governance in the end? Who is taking which decisions, and what kind of model could be suitable in order to respond to this need for flexibility?
If I come back to my example in the ERICs, I think it's the governing board that we decide to have in this European node, because finally it's there where the member states and all the different partners have a say in this.
Yeah, but in an ERIC, although an ERIC regulation is an EU regulation, where is the EU in all of that?
No. In no case, I am saying that the way to go ahead with this EOSC Federation is the ERIC. I am not. I am just supported in the ERIC because it's what I know better. But I not. I think no, and I am convinced that the ERIC is not the model to follow for the governance of in this case.
Because we expect a long-term commitment from the European Commission in the governance and I guess also in the funding.
So we have already a governance that I think that functions very well, the tripartite. I think this has to continue in this direction. We want to have all the parties around the table that are important, the funders, the Commission being part of them, and the member states, and the association representing the stakeholders in the community. This is there. Of course, I mean, does this have to evolve? Do we have enough voice of different kind of stakeholders? That's probably something to reflect upon. Might be, might not be. It depends what the community decides. And yes, of course, this is a long-term process. It will take time. The reflections are there. The reflections are there on the legal setup, who will somehow operate this EU node, if you want, or do we want that to go beyond or not? There is a discussion on the funding, where we also understand that, of course, Commission has been the one very visibly funding through grants and the co-program setup. But of course, there are investments from the member states happening already. That's not new. There are contributions from at the institutional level as well. And this will probably continue like that. I think that this is something that the train has left the station, right? This is now going, and now the question of balances, of course, this may evolve over time. There may be, at certain moment, shift of the balances of how much who contributes. I've seen also in the questions that there is like a question of bottom-up. There's little funding so far. I don't know if this has to change or not. It's we will see how this evolves. But I think that the process of this reflection of how the post-27 world for EOSC will look like is so essential, and a lot of these questions will be addressed and hopefully also answered in the process.
Indeed. I wanted to ask you, Eric, what can we learn from the GEAN model, and how has that evolved and proven to be flexible with, let's say, the evolution?
Yeah, so this is, I think I disagree with you on that. I think funders should not have a place in the governance. Funders can steer through their requirements on the funding, and to give them an extra voice in the governance makes an imbalance towards the users. In the GEAN model, we are governed by our members. We are an association, just like the EOSC Association. We're governed by our members. Our funding comes from member states through the members and from the European Commission. But the member states nor the European Commission has a direct influence in our governance. And that works really well. It balances the strategy that our members want, user-driven, with the vision of the funders like the European Commission that have the funding as a tool. And in that combination, you get friction, but that friction leads to real good discussions, and that has evolved very well over the life of GEAN. So I'm very much in favor, and also looking at various NRENs in national research and education networks in various countries. Most of the strong NRENs don't have any involvement in the governance from their government.
Well, that's a challenging statement, I guess, for representatives of the Commission and the steering board, because normally you would say those who pay define the tune. Is that something where you say the Commission and the member states need to have a voice in the governance of whatever the future model will be?
At the moment, the discussions are shared, right? And everybody's around the table trying to, I think, very honestly progress on these questions and put it and develop the models for the future that are sustainable, that make sense, and that they support the initiative in such a way that it can deliver the value to the users. That's, at the end of the day, the question. Will that change? Will this evolve? Do the funders necessarily need to be part of it? I think this is a matter that can, that is, of course, we've seen different models. There are different models that exist, and indeed, there are models where the funders have no direct impact, at least not in operational aspects, but there are also models where there is very close collaboration, for example, HPC or things like that. There, you know that the Commission is very, very close to it and also works. So there are examples of both, and either or, I'm not sure that there is the ideal case, but it has to be put into the context.
Jose Maria.
Yeah, I think that besides that there are examples of all, is that there are moments that are different in each organization. And you were talking, I believe, in a very steady state. And at that stage, it would be fantastic that it's user-driven. Until we reach that state, I think it is difficult to imagine that a heavy involvement at the funding level of member state, the Commission, is not going to be also reflected in the governance.
My position is also similar. I think that ideally, of course, we would like, even from the member states' view, to have something established that doesn't require the involvement of the member states in very active way. So we, for sure, we are going to follow how this is working and to have a good funding for going ahead with the initiatives, monitoring, and so on. But we are not there. We are in an initial process. So I think that we need to be involved. We need to share, as we are sharing by now. And of course, if everything runs properly, if we build a wonderful EOSC, and we have the best governance and the best people running the organization, I think that in general, the member states are going to be happy to leave our children.
So maybe, Sarah, since you are monitoring the Slido, maybe there we can pick up a question to clarify also some aspects.
Yeah, so there are several questions. Maybe I start with the most popular question, which is something that we discussed yesterday while we were preparing the panel, and we said, we need to answer this question. And then we thought, well, no, that's not necessary, but maybe it is. And the question is, are we sure we are still building something the researchers actually want and need?
Okay, who wants to answer?
Okay, I'll take a shot. No, I think we said that in the introduction as well, right? The end users have to be the center of the focus of these things. And perhaps much of the discussion that goes on, the end users may not seem directly concerned with many of these points, right? They're the points that should be hidden from them. All they want to see is how do they get access, seamless access to the services and data sets which they find interesting for their research. And they don't really care if it's in what node that's in, which country it's in, those things. They just want to get seamless access to it. And that, for me, is the point when I talk about the idea of moving from the theoretical model to the practical deployment model. We have to make sure now that as we deploy the EOSC Federation, that it really does address that point, that it makes it a nice and useful experience for the end users.
Eric, please.
Yeah, I think I align with Bob, but I'd like to say, it is the job of member states, governments, and the European Commission to set policies that benefit the whole of society. And sometimes that doesn't align exactly with what, in this case, researchers want. In the same way that the Green Deal will, it's necessary for society at large. Some parts of society won't like it. So you need the vision, what is good for society, and you need the bottom up, what researchers want, but you can't just go by what researchers want, because then you'll never end up with a vision.
In the morning session on the data spaces, there was a contribution from the colleague representing the mobility space, and then he said, yeah, our companies, I mean, they're looking into it has to be fast and cost effective. Have we been fast and cost effective enough so far, and how can we improve if we haven't?
I can answer that. If you have a corporation, you can move very fast and cost effective. But then you need an enormous marketing apparatus to make sure that your solution is adopted. We try, I think, essentially in this community to build a community EOSC, and that means that we work from the acceptance as a starting point, and that means you'll be slower to get it done, but once it's there, you'll be much faster.
I am surprised for the question, because from a point of view, I have no doubt about that. So the researchers are in the real core of everything here. The researchers are the ones that are represented in the association, and they are the ones that are discussing about all the different technical aspects. And at the level of the member state, we are trying to give them the tools, the means to go ahead with this, because it is required by them. I can tell you that we held the meeting of the National Tripartite just the day before of this symposium, and at the community there was a strong participation of the Spanish community in the meeting, and all of them applaud the initiative. All of them wants to be involved. All of them wants to have better engagement in all of this. So I have no doubt that the researchers are behind.
Okay, Sarah, you will confirm that with the next question, hopefully.
Yeah, there are quite a lot of similar questions, clearly from different perspectives. And now we're talking about the different roles. So, for example, the relevance that the research infrastructure have in the federation, the relevance of the e-infrastructure in the federation, but we shouldn't forget about the long tail of science. So that's another remark. And also the role of the projects in all of this. And I think that the question is about, I think maybe you should reflect a bit on the roles of all these actors, because clearly the diverse audience is highlighting that all the roles that I just mentioned are key in moving to the future. Maybe what is their role, and also the question says that we should ensure that also all these actors have a sort of sustainability in the future.
Okay, shall we start from the end here with Eric reflecting on the role of the e-infrastructures, the research infrastructures, and then Bob, you deal with the community.
Yeah, I think I said it all in my introduction. The e-infrastructures are there. We've been around for over 30 years. We are evolving continuously to the newest technologies. We make sure we listen to research infrastructures and individual researchers. We build on that. We are ready. Everything is in place. You can rely on the e-infrastructures, and please do so. Of course, at the same time, we're interested in the evolution here and to hear what happens here, so that we can make sure that our interface between the e-infras and what is necessary at the data layers is working flawlessly.
Thanks very much. Jose Maria.
Yeah, I mean, the research infrastructures, what we concentrate is in providing access to normally distributed infrastructures, produce data, and in that production of data, we want the data to be used by others and to be intermixed with other sources.
So I think one was probably not in your list that you mentioned, but universities as well. I think that's a very important stakeholder group that we have to make sure are also actively involved in EOSC. In the association, we have a significant number of individual universities participating in the membership, but also groupings or associations of universities as well. So this is a mechanism for ensuring that the research performed at universities is also taken into account. One of the other group that you mentioned was the long tail of science. This often proves difficult to get a handle on because it's not so well structured. You can't go to an organization which represents the long tail of science. There are individual volunteer structures and so on, but they're not universities, they're not research infrastructures and so on. So finding a mechanism by which you can talk to them is quite difficult. In the end, just talking to smaller groups, that requires a lot of energy and efficiency. So it comes a bit back to, as Eric said, about having the good marketing model in place so that we can deal with those. One good thing, I think, probably for the EC at the moment is with the foreseen procurement of the upcoming EC node, there are horizontal services included. And essentially, if any of those long tail of science are able to get an EduGain account, they could potentially have access to the resources to perform research through the EC node.
Thanks very much. So before we open the floor for the discussion here, I suggest that we do a bit of a view into the future and say, what are we doing between now in the tripartite constellation, where we are the member states with the steering board, we are the European Commission and the community, in order to get to the future, also from a kind of negotiations process. Dejan, we have a roadmap. Do we stick to this roadmap?
We need to have these discussions. We need to progress on reflections. We have options on the table. The understanding is deepening as we go of different impacts, of different roles the different actors want and would like to play, of yes, of how the whole setup is going to look. This discussion has to continue. We need to keep up with the roadmap. Of course, the MFF is in front of the door, the next MFF, right? And we really would like to and hope that we come to some sort of a common understanding and agreement, and then beyond the roadmap of the process of deciding, starting, kicking off the roadmap of implementing of these decisions that we will commonly agree on.
We are working, Immaculada, towards having, let's say, maybe an agreed scenario we then want to pitch, so to speak, together to the next framework program in the course of the first semester next year. Are we on track? And if not, what can we help to become on track or get on track?
I am convinced that all of us are working together in order to be ready for being on track. We need to be on track. There is no possibility, no other possibility. It is clear, and I think that we are working. We are at the level of the steering board. A lot of work has been done. We are waiting for this document, analyzing all the possibilities, and I am convinced that we have time for taking good decisions at the level at the common level in the steering group, but also at national level, in order to be able to have a good position when the preparation of the next framework program is necessary to include all the things related with the EOSC. And in this moment, we have to take into consideration all of the things that we have been discussing today, even this of the question of Sarah. We have to find the best way to deal with this needs that are required in order to establish the EOSC. And we have to see how we can address it and from where we have to find the funds for doing it. And we have to decide if it should be an action that should be put in place from the European Commission. And of course, we are going to see how we can include this in the work programs, in the work program of research infrastructure and in the rest of the work programs, in order to build what is needed. And also from the member state, we have to design our system and see what possibilities we have in order to address the needs that we have on the table.
Thanks very much. Now we have about, let's say, a few more minutes to have questions from here, from the audience, because I would guess not everyone used the Slido. So there's one behind.
Okay. I would just say
Could you quickly introduce yourself.
Yuri Demchenko, University of Amsterdam, and slide arrived, which is exposed on the exhibition. I would very much fully support what Eric presented as a diagram or model. It is built on the conceptual vision of internet. It is built on experience of giant, continuous development and evolution, and two other statements that don't reinvent AI and the new gain. It should be, and also use a governance model that Giant. I worked for Giant project many years, but now mostly focusing on S3 slices. And this is also my comments in previous sessions that I told that we need professional approach to designing architecture and infrastructure. And also what Eric calls vision. First make vision, after that go bottom up. Okay, so.
Thanks very much. Do we have questions here in the room? Giorgio.
Yes, Giorgio Rossi. I think EOSC should start to be perceived also as a defensive apparatus. Maybe it's the first example of European common defense in science. Because the scientific community is going to be under attack, can be positive but can be negative, by artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence, if trained on fair data, has a high potential as an enhancer of research. If trained on uncontrolled data or machine-made up data with malicious intentions, can be a disaster. And so the researchers should feel that EOSC, making the effort to contribute fair data, developing fair data services, is not only an option for them to expand perhaps their individual research, but it will be a protection defense line, because at some point we might be in the position of saying this artificial intelligence product clearly was not trained on fair data and we distrust it or we take it with much care. This other one is trained on fair data and we can make good use of that. So I would say science is exposed to a possible incoming attack by this Moloch, and we have to interpret EOSC also from that point of view as an urgent defense apparatus.
Okay, the EOSC army. Who wants to comment? Bob.
Yeah, it's a concern for I think for the whole population, not just for EOSC. I think there are a number of steps that have already been taken, which are going in that direction. Understanding, first of all, that becoming AI ready, because it can serve the researchers themselves. So trying to ensure that what is put in place with EOSC is machine actionable. That's an important tenet of what we need to do. But there are two other elements as well. I think, and it's been discussed a lot this week as well, establishing this network of trusted repositories. Having that in place, and in also having ways of assuring the quality of the data, not only the trusted repositories, but the quality of the data sets, having measures in place, and we know that the task forces are active in this work. I think those are some of the steps that we can take as a community inside EOSC to address the issues that Giorgio has raised.
And I could say that at the level of research infrastructures is the best way to know that you are close to the instrument. So what is coming out of the instrument is what you get.
Eric, please.
Yeah, I think this is why, besides FAIR, there was also the concept of care data. And I think this is exactly right. FAIR data can still be crap data, right? And so that's where you need the care. And that makes it more difficult, but I think this is an ethical responsibility for researchers as well.
We come to the closing remarks. Shall I, let's say, come up with my conclusions first, and then you have one sentence to comment on it, whether you see the future as bright as I do? And the only answer can be yes, of course. No? Okay. So, Yes, so the first thing is, I mean, and that is, because it's also important that after those 3 weeks, 3 days that have been very intensive, we had multiple discussion, that we also start to repeat things and to clarify things, and it's always good if we all get with the same messages home, and one message is the EOSC EU node is not a master node, but a reference node. So that's one take-home message, I guess, from us. And we also said we need to build the EOSC Federation in a bottom-up approach where we will, together with the community, do agree on the rules of participation for this EOSC Federation. So that's the second thing for you to take home. Would you agree? You can comment later, but these are the proposed conclusions that I invite you to comment on. When it comes to the tripartite collaboration, I think we do have a tough roadmap that we're working to with the European Commission, the steering board, and the EOSC Association in order to make sure that EOSC is anchored in the next framework program. And we all have our role to play to get to this future in the next framework program. And that's, I think, that's an encouragement for all of us, that there's a high level of commitment to meet these deadlines that we have set ourselves in order to be there as of 2028. Yeah, and I think it's also very encouraging to know that the European Commission has a long-term commitment when it comes to the funding of EOSC post-2027. And we hope to get equally a commitment from the member states of taking EOSC into the future when it comes to the financial sustainability, and then we have to discuss the details where and on which level exactly that's going to happen. And with that, I invite you to a round of closing statements, encouraging you to be as positive as possible.
Well, I think that we are positive. We are convinced today that EOS is a need for Europe. It is going to give us better tools, a better condition for production of excellent research. This is a clear conviction that we have in Spain. We want to see also in this process tangible things, because this is also important, and it's also important for the engagement of our researchers. They need to have to see that EOS is offering them services for better work for them. So we are positive. We are convinced that we are going to support EOS, and that we are going to continue working in this tripartite exercise in order to build this EOS that we need for our researchers and our community.
Thank you. Yeah, EOSC is going, what we see is also EOSC is coming to a new phase, right? It's growing up and it's maturing. And with this maturation, we have a number of challenges ahead that we need to address. One of them has been mentioned several times, is operations and running federation, having some minimal set of standards around that. And Commission has been through all this process very extensively involved, and we keep being involved, and with various means, a lot of effort on our side. But what I see is very encouraging, because the community is also, I think, convinced that this is important, and that there is will and energy behind to move further. And we want, I think, whether this is, the more this is for, the end users, that they see value in it, the more they will be using it, the more demand will be behind, and the cycle will keep drive itself to grow.
So I suggest, Bob, you get the final word, and we start with Eric here.
I think my final word is I'd like to thank the Commission and the Member States for their vision on EOSC, but at the same time warn them to keep their focus on the vision. Think about how you fund this, how you stimulate this, but don't fall into the trap of trying to design it. Leave the design to the community.
Thanks a lot. Jose Maria.
Well, I leave this meeting really with the notion that there is a concrete way for a research infrastructure to get into EOSC. So far, it was very vague to me, and things are getting into concreteness.
Bob, the voice of the community.
So I think this event has shown a great deal of energy and vibrant enthusiasm for EOSC. We're very optimistic of how it's going to move forward. We count very much on the tripartite structure for helping us come to a rapid conclusion on what will be the way that EOSC will be put in place post-2027. And I'd like to finish with a plea of saying to everybody that has these brilliant ideas, we have to focus 2024 as being the year of deployment, where we actually demonstrate added value to the end user.
Thank you very much. So, with that, I would like to thank this fantastic panel for all your contributions. You have already given them a big hand, but maybe you can do it again and invite them then. Thanks very much for the contribution, taking then EOSC into the future. And with that, now I would like to invite our final speaker, gentleman, lady. And we're very happy to have her here today. It's Raquel Yotti Alvarez. She is General Secretary of Research of the Spanish Ministry for Science and Innovation. And thank you so much for being here, being our host here also in Spain during the Spanish presidency. It has been a great pleasure being here, and Spain has been a fantastic host. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. It's a pleasure for me to be here with all of you today at this closure of the EOSC Symposium 23, held in Madrid in the context of the Spanish presidency of the Council of the European Union. With 400 individuals registered for in-person attendance, a strong online presence through streaming, and over 100 speakers, you've had the opportunity to engage in discussions over these days on a wide range of topics concerning the present and the future of the European Open Science Cloud. Furthermore, on the 19th at the CSIC headquarters, we also hosted the Spanish tripartite event with the participation of over 70 attendees. And during that event, the Spanish EOSC research community had the opportunity to assess the progress of EOSC and the activities undertaken this year by the tripartite, gain insights into current developments within data-intensive communities by thematic areas, and learn through concrete examples about possible governance structures to be considered for EOSC beyond 2027. EOSC is currently in the process of consolidation. It is set to enter the convergence phase between 2025 and 2027, aiming to establish an operational platform that can harness the full potential of research data to expedite discoveries and innovation. However, this is alone, it's not enough. The initiative must also be sustainable in the long term. To this end, there has been extensive discussion regarding EOSC beyond 2027. One of the main outcomes of this symposium is the urgent need to reach an agreement on the structure and governance of EOSC, involving all relevant parties, namely the European Commission, member states and associated countries, and researchers at large through their respective institutions. Furthermore, considering existing uncertainties, this structure should be flexible enough to be progressively adapted to unforeseen EOSC needs. Another extensively discussed aspect of the conference was the sustainability of EOSC initiative. Sustainability is a shared commitment among the institutions within EOSC, member states and associated countries, as well as the European Commission. The conference has provided valuable insights into current state of developments and in the three strategic objectives of EOSC. First, strengthening the capabilities and recognition of researchers in carrying out open science activities. Second, ensuring compliance with the FAIR principles and developing interoperability standards. And third, making progress in the Federation of Service and Research Infrastructures. Spain is firmly committed to actively participating in EOSC. We have explicitly included this action in our national open science strategy, in which interoperability with EOSC is the key component of the first strategic objective. Additionally, the commitment of a Spanish institution to the construction of EOSC is highly significant, with 31 of them being members of the institutions to the members of a service of the EOSC Association. And Spain is the second most represented country in terms of the number of institutions within the association. And besides, over 25 from the Spanish institutions are actively participating in various working groups of the association. Through these actions, we underscore Spain's dedications to the development of EOSC, open science, and the research infrastructures that support it. In concluding, I'd like to invite all of you to the official events of the Spanish presidency of the European Union Council in the coming week. The Open Science Fair Conference to be held here in Madrid, and also the conference Global Dimension and Sustainability of Research Infrastructures in Tenerife, which will be followed by several satellite events, all within the framework of research infrastructure. Thank you very much for your active participation in the EOSC Symposium 23. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Jotti. That was very encouraging. So there's more to discuss, but we are not yet at the end. I would like to give the floor now to Ron Decker, because this event has been organized in the framework of EOSC Future Project, which somehow comes to an end, but not really. And so there's a future for EOSC Future, and Ron, the floor is yours.
And yes, I have my instructions from Ute and from Sarah. Of course, it's impossible to summarize this conference, but allow me to give some personal observations. I think what the EC, what Dejan summarized is the community is growing, the maturity is increasing, and we must dare to go beyond the technical and the data management. That brings me to the first point I addressed at the beginning of the conference, the engagement. I think these 3 days showed the engagement of this community. The presentations, the discussions, I learned a lot from the unconference, so no doubt about the engagement. For the continuity, again, many discussions, and I think also what was mentioned on the framework conditions for governance. It's let's prevent to have the silos. And also what Immaculada said, give room for flexibility, and it was repeated by the Secretary General as well. Give this room for flexibility, and in the continuity we also have the procurement. Yes, we are still in as the EOSC Future in this, in the extension. We have the procurement, we have the extension, we have new projects. Finally, on the sustainability, my third point, I could see many discussions going on new models, the nodes. We have the EOSC Observatory for the monitoring, so at least we can follow where we are going. And again, in this observatory, there is high response from the member states, so there is huge and real interest. Finally, for me, we have the EOSC platform. As Immaculada said, we have built a wonderful EOSC. We have the momentum, and last not but least, we have you. So thank you very much for making this conference possible, giving us the momentum and giving us the energy to continue to work on EOSC. Thank you.
So then, this conference would not have been happening if not a lot of people had worked on it and prepared it. And Sarah, you have a long list of people, I guess now you have to thank. And I would like to invite you to come on stage, please.
Indeed, I have a lot of paper here, so be ready for that. But as Ute said, so this event has been possible thanks to the hard work of so many people that now I will try to thank, and I hope I'm not forgetting anyone. So I would like to start from the Spanish presidency, of course. So thank you very much for hosting us in the beautiful Madrid. Thank you, Raquel, Immaculada, Pilar, and Ignacio. Please, an applause for them. The second big thank you goes to the European Commission, sitting mainly here in the main rows. DG RTD, DG Connect, and REA, that have been supporting us to this travel to Madrid, but it seems they will be supporting us also for next travels in the future. So thank you very much to the European Commission for your contributions. A big important thank you goes to the program committee. They did really a huge work in trying to package all this program of this event in finding the right topics for engaging all of you. So I would like to thank you, Karel, Ute, and Ignacio from the EOSC Association, Volker, Giorgio, Immaculada, and Pilar from the steering board, Pantelis from DG RTD, Magdalena from DG Connect, and Ron Decker from EOS Future. Thanks a lot. The other big thank you when it comes to the program goes to all the session organizers. So we haven't done this just with the hands of the program committee, but huge amount of people that now are sitting in the audience have been helping us in framing all the sessions. So thank you very much, and official apologies if we have stalked you over the summer. So thank you very much for your patience. Yeah. The symposium is not just only about the content, but is also making sure that all of us have the most enjoyable networking experience. And, well, the Madrid weather helped with that a lot, but this would not have been possible without the effort of the organizing committee. I want to start thanking the people from Arctic, Christophe, Alo, Alexandra, Andreas, and Viviana, and I would like to ask you to stand up or wave, so that people see that you have been one of the big engines. And I also would like the other people to stand up from Traseti, Rob, and Diego, my CSC colleagues, Pihla, Anu, Rosa, and Iris, and all the support person that facilitated the session. Can you please stand up? Big thank you also to the staff of the hotel, especially Aroa, but also the AV technicians. Thank you very much. We also had outside a beautiful exhibition area, so thanks a lot to all the exhibitors that joined us in Madrid, so you really enriched and complemented our event, so thanks a lot. I have one last thank you, and I really hope I didn't forget anyone. And the last thank you is to all of you, all the participants, all the projects, all the online participants. And sorry if there were some glitches maybe on the first day. I hope you managed to follow the conference. In any case, all the presentations are online. We will also make available recordings from the sessions available. So thank you very much.
And who deserves the biggest thank you from all of you? Because it's easy to be member of a program committee when all the work is being done by someone else in the background. So thank you so much, Sarah, for making this happen. And shall I tell you the good news? She will be around for next year. So, and this brings us to our last and final presentation. Thank you so much for being here in Madrid. Keep on being engaged, keep on being the voice of the community, and keep on being contributing. And of course, also keep on being engaged in the tripartite governance and collaboration. We will see you again, and that's the next slide, please. We will see you at the EOSC Symposium in 2024. We don't have the date yet, so you're still flexible, but the destination is clear, and that's the next slide. We will see you in Berlin. We will see you in autumn 2024 in Berlin, and some of you know that there was a plan to have the EOSC Symposium in 2020 in Berlin. Then we had to deal with the pandemic, and fortunately we couldn't go there. So I invite you to come back in 2024, some point in autumn. You will get a save the date as soon as possible. And we know the EOSC Symposium is a very desired place to be. This year we were sold out, so to speak, on the last day of the registration. Don't miss the save the date and register as soon as it's open. I'm going to see you there. Thank you very much, and have a good
Still working. So we have lunch, just for your information, as with the other days.